Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Connections post show. I am joined by some amazing people, Matt, Andy, and Austin. Sometimes I wish that you guys could hear our conversations before the post show starts. We were talking about if it's possible to baptize somebody using a blob, like on a lake. So that's what we talked about today.
For those of you that don't know what a blob is,
Yes.
that's where you lay it on a giant inflatable and one person jumps on it and shoots the other one off.
I think as long as we follow it up with the waffle communion, we're good.
Waffle Communion, August 24th of 2025 is National Waffle Day.
Waffle communion, that works.
Waffle Communion.
Finally would have a really tasty wafer.
Dave is going to be listening to this like, oh my gosh, this is so bad.
We need to
He's like, of
cancel
course,
that whole
Andy
show.
came up with it.
This is so bad. We need to cancel them. So, okay. Well, this week, or this past week, was Big Surf. So I just want to hear what you guys did for Big Surf, what your highlight is, or maybe something you saw on social media that was like, oh, it was really cool getting to see pictures or videos of that. So whoever wants to open the floor, go ahead.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to go to Vicksburg High School and the middle school and be able to help them out. They had a big pile of dirt that they were planning to use for the Gaga pit and a bunch of mulch that we're going to put around the school just to make it look a lot better and just to really bless Vicksburg and the schools.
Nice.
And the pile was just sitting there, just a giant pile. And I mean, it takes a lot of work to be able to move all of that stuff. So
really does.
just being able to come together with a bunch of
Nice.
people, find different ways to be able to move that, and just make it so that there's one less thing that they have to worry
Absolutely.
about was something that was really cool to see that type of impact and know that, hey, they don't have to worry about that. It's the end of the school year. They can focus on that, focus on making sure things are getting ready for the summer. And yeah, that was really cool.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Awesome.
Andy?
Oh, man. First off, shout out to my wife and the crew who did like 100
Yes,
and some
that
plus
was
blankets.
so
They were
many
here for like
blankets.
11 hours.
Yep.
Angie got home. Her back was killing her, but she was like, it's worth it.
Yep.
So that was amazing. My site, Thursday, we scraped and sanded, myself and Gary and Kathy DeMont. So thank you for that. And then Friday, I was start working, trying to get out of work as fast as I could. But my dad, Gary Arndt, Perry, Kathy, some other people showed up. Yeah, it's too many people to think of. But man, painted and got so much painting work done. And after they were gone, I showed up for a couple of second coat
Yep.
boards, and I was like, well, great, this is all I got to do. But I stayed and helped Andy caulk for like 2 hours.
Awesome.
We chatted and talked. It was really awesome to see just how impactful it was for him, because he's like, oh, I can now focus on something else that I've been meaning to do around here. So it's just awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is.
I supported from a distance.
What was some of the cool things that you saw on our social media about it?
Oh, I thought the before and after of the house that was stripped
Yes.
and repainted was really cool.
That was really cool.
Yeah, I was
welcome.
just working all week, and I also was cooking for a grad party since Thursday to Saturday.
What'd you cook?
3 pork shoulders and 2 briskets.
And you didn't bring us
There was
any.
no leftovers for us to try.
There was literally like 6 strips of brisket and like
1, 2, 3, 4.
maybe like a half pound of pulled pork left.
Okay.
Yeah.
Half pound for Andy. That works.
For me, my Big Sur site was yesterday, and we went to this house out in Watt, and we just dragged some random tires out of the woods. Like, I guess the previous homeowner just had a bunch of tires back there, so we dragged them out of the woods, cut down a
Where are we
couple
going
of
to put
trees.
these tires? Throw them in the woods.
The guy that we helped was super grateful. So it was quick, but
Hey.
he was so blessed by it. So it was such a really cool opportunity to be able to go and serve.
Yep.
But to everybody that helped with Big Serve, thank you so much. What we do during that week, our first time doing it for a whole week, is not possible if you guys don't come out and help and support. So if you help with Big Serve, or you know somebody that helped with Big Serve, thank you so much.
Over
We
120
appreciate it.
people.
Over 120 people.
Awesome.
Yes, and I think over 15 different sites. Is that what it
15 or
was?
16
Yeah,
sites, yeah.
15 or 16 different things that we did.
Yep.
So,
Our church rules. You guys can take the rest of the week off.
all right, let's hop into today's message. We continued our series, Get Your Giving into Gear. Pastor Dave gave another great message. So what stood out to you in today's message? One big takeaway, one thing that stood out to you. Let me pull up my notes.
Since you
Yeah.
guys have more of a time crunch than I do.
Yeah, you
go ahead.
guys have-
No, I think it just, I mean, obviously we're talking about tithing, and I think it was important to talk about just the rich history that was a part of tithing, just going back from the Old Testament to some of the things that
Right.
Jesus taught to the early church. I think that was important. And just the power that there is in tithing. I think it can be something where we can reluctantly give just because God has done that. But I think there can be big impact that tithing could have in our community, in the surrounding worlds that we have, that if we're able to come together with that benchmark that God has set before us, powerful things can happen, and this world can change as a result of that. So I think that was something that was really important, just to know the history behind that, and also to understand the impact that it can have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I get to see a lot of the behinds of the scenes and like hear a lot of conversations that happen amongst the pastors, and just like the ideas that we dream up that are gonna come to fruition eventually, all have to be funded somehow, because they're amazing things that we are planning on doing and are doing currently. And then just like, I don't know, it just feels good to be a part of a church that is like that. And that's just kind of what I was repeating to myself over, and it was like, wow, my church is dope.
Yep, you heard it here first. But I mean, to tie on to a whole week of serving and being generous with people's time, and part of Dave's message, and you may touch on it later, generosity comes in multiple different forms.
Yep.
And the fact that we had over 120 people donate countless hours this week to just help
Absolutely.
without any reason other than we're called to do it is pretty awesome. I think the thing that always stands out to me, because it's one of those things that I fall victim to, is after I do everything I want, then I'll give to God. And it's like, no, you got to give of your first and your best. And that's like always convicting, but when I do that, and have been doing that lately, it's crazy how things do work out, and how just you feel better about things, but just how much more open you are to God's gifts.
Yeah, I think it comes from that act of faithfulness that we have to a God. Dave talked a lot about the fear of God, and that doesn't mean necessarily to be terrified of God, but that overwhelming respect that we have for our Creator, who has blessed us with so much and is so mighty, so powerful, to be able to use the resources, the best resources that we have. Just going back to the Cain and Abel story back in the Old Testament in Genesis, give the best 10% that you can have for God, and that can make a big impact in our world.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think for me, what stood out, I loved how, to kind of piggyback off what you said at the beginning, how he went through such like the history of it, like going all the way back to Abel and Abraham and Jacob, and how they're giving 10% and they don't even, it's not even like stated yet. Like we don't get this 10% until the book of Malachi, a couple places before that with like the Levitical offerings and all that kind of stuff. But how they are already doing it before it even happens, because they are wanting to put God first above all of that. And on top of this is usually a topic that, as we touched on last week, is like taboo in churches. Like churches don't, like, for some reason, they don't want to talk about money, but they want people to serve God in every single aspect of our lives. So a huge shout out to Pastor Dave for tackling this topic head on, but making it in a way of, we're not up here asking for you to give us all this money. We're up here because we want to help you to obey what God has called you to do. Yeah. And there's multiple different ways that you can do that within this one tiny realm. So I've really enjoyed this entire series as a whole. So how can giving generously, this is one of Dave's points throughout the message, how can giving generously serve as an antidote to the seduction of money?
I would go just like, it's kind of like exposure therapy over time. Like the more you expose yourself to giving, the less seductive money is. Yeah. Because, I mean, for so many reasons, but mainly you see the outcome of what your generosity has just done, and that then you start to notice, oh wait, this feels way better than the acquisition of money.
Yeah.
All the time.
And stuff.
Yeah.
I also think it builds discipline when you create a consistent pattern, especially if you take that first 10% and build off of that, set that as your benchmark first,
Yep.
and then go from there. I think you can be less reliant on the full power that money has, and I think just going and doing that and being responsible for God is going to help build that discipline over time.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I think falls into this, like what Dave is specifically talking about in this point, is you can't serve God and you can't serve money. Like at the same time, like you can't be a slave to both. And a guy that I listen to all the time, his name is Jonathan Pokluda. He talks about how your beliefs drive your actions. So it kind of falls into this place right here. Like if you 100% believe in Jesus, you believe in Jesus as your Lord and Savior, then you want to do what Jesus says. When Jesus talks about giving, it's not just, hey, I recommend you do this. Jesus is going, no, this is a command. In fact, we see Jesus going above and beyond 10%. I mean, he talks about, hey, if a soldier asks you to carry his stuff a mile, take it too. Like he's going above and beyond what is required in giving because it is what we are called to do and we want to obey him. So if we're walking this fine line of I believe in Jesus, but I also need this security, false security from money, we can easily slip into constantly falling into the seduction of, oh, here's this investment opportunity, a bigger job, all this kind of stuff. I want to keep this money. I mean, the average Christian, like Pastor Dave was talking about, gives 2.5%. Well, I mean, we're commanded by God to give that 10% either to the church or to help people that are in need. So I think exposing yourself, like just starting it with that benchmark and letting your belief in Jesus drive your actions fully in a way of obeying him is one of the best ways generosity can serve as an antidote to the seduction of money.
Yeah, and I think it's also another aspect where times are tough, and we totally understand that
absolutely.
there is a lot of financial insecurity in the realm. But it also is something where we also want to remember priorities too. Yeah. I think when we become that follower of Jesus, we want to see the mission get spread out into the world. And I think oftentimes if we fall into the seduction of money, we can be inward focused. How can I make my life better? How can I do the things to provide security? If we look at big picture, man, we are not very good at creating security because we live in a very broken world. Yeah. So I think relying on God, trusting him with that portion and trusting him to do the rest, I think is going to help with your priorities really. And I think it's going to make a big impact on life.
Yeah.
One thing that's been said to me a lot recently, because I'm just an anxious person overall, so like I'm constantly thinking about the future, like are my savings here, whatever.
Yeah.
It always works out, even if it sucks, it works out because God will make it work out. Not that it'll always be good, like things, not that it won't be hard, but like it always works out. You'll be fine. It's very, very unlikely that tithing 10% is going to be the reason that you don't make rent that month. And not saying that doesn't happen, but like you'll likely be fine. Yeah. And you'll see the blessings afterwards. Yeah. Even if it doesn't happen the first time you tithe, you'll see them eventually.
Yeah. I mean, and God in the Bible says if you're allowed to test me in one spot, and that place you're allowed to test me is through your finances and through giving. And I am a firm believer that when we give our 10%, that God is going to bless that. Not in the place of we are giving to receive, but we are giving to give. And when we truly live in a place of I'm giving my 10% to give to what God has called me to give to, that's when this overwhelming amount of blessing is poured out. And yeah, there might be, when you start, it might be like, oh my gosh, I'm taking $200 of the $2,000 that I make every single month and I'm giving it to God, and this is scary, and I got to put this budget together and everything's going up. But as you do it more through that exposure, there's also this level of peace that comes into play too, where you stop worrying about your finances so much because you see God keep showing up in different ways that you would never expect. And you're like, man, like God just keeps showing up, and you just have this peace. Even through the times it's like, I don't know how I'm going to pay all these bills. God shows up, and it's like you still have this overwhelming sense of peace. So, well, Matt, Austin, I know you guys got to go play some instruments.
Go
So
rock everybody's socks off.
we appreciate you guys coming to join us for a few minutes this morning. So your thoughts and wisdom are always valued. So go enjoy
You are dismissed.
shredding some instruments.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I was going to ask the other question, but I was like, well, they're going to be here for like 30 seconds and then they're going to have to get up and go. So I might as well just give them a proper send off this time. So see you guys.
See ya.
And then it was just us again, Josh.
And now it's me and Andy, and everybody just turned the post show off.
Like, man, youth group, I feel bad for those kids.
So one of the questions that Dave asked at the very beginning of the message, Andy, you're more than willing to answer this if you want to, but you don't have to. Sure. This is kind of a question that I want to remind everybody of because it's a fantastic question to be able to answer or to ask yourself to answer and reflect. But the very first question that Dave asked in the message was, does God think you're generous? So like, I really encourage everybody that's listening, take an internal evaluation. We learned today about what tithing is. We've also learned how we can give generously through our time, like through things with Big Sur, volunteering in the church. If you were to have a conversation with God, do you think that God thinks you're generous? Like with everything, do you believe that you are obeying him through your generosity? And if that answer is no, or I'm not sure, then analyze what you're doing to be able to take those steps to grow towards being more generous. And if that answer is yes, that is absolutely amazing. I encourage you to grow in that generosity also. We don't want to hit a 10% cap and stay there forever. We want to constantly keep growing and honoring God in every step that we take. So this week, I highly encourage you, answer the question, does God think you are generous? Because that's a great reflection question that we can constantly be asking ourselves every single day. And to piggyback off of that, we're going to help you give some steps in this. What steps can we take to benchmark our giving and grow in generosity?
Okay. First, I'll answer your first question.
Oh, yes.
Because this is one of the first
We'll pop back
messages
over
of
to
this
it.
kind where I've been able to go like sit back and go like, yes, I can finally say.
Yeah.
I think, yes, I am being generous. And I
Awesome.
think God would look at me and go, yes, Andy, I know that you've purposely set aside what I ask of you and your time and this and that. So yes, like today was one of those times when I went, finally, after like 40 years on this earth, I can go, yes. But in terms of the other question, like what steps can you take for benchmarking? I mean, seriously, sit down and just write all of your expenditures. We've done that before.
Yeah.
Look at it and go, all right, I'm using this, doing that. Do I really need this other streaming service for $6 a month? It's just $6, and how you look at it, or how I look at it. But then I'm like, wait a minute, am I really watching it? Is it really worth my time and effort? Could that money be spent better elsewhere, savings or something else? So write down a list of what you spend, and then I'm gonna sound like my dad here. Make sure you have your needs first, and wants are not needs. As much as we want stuff, we don't need it. And your needs,
you need to pay your mortgage, your rent. You need food. You need electricity.
Insurance. Yes, I'm going to say insurance because I'm the insurance guy.
You don't need streaming services.
You don't need streaming services.
Yeah.
You don't need excess pop candy, all this stuff.
You don't need it.
We're going to start tomorrow a summer fast, Angie and I, of like pop, slushies for her, which is a big step.
Oh, that is a big step. Angie, we will be praying
I will
for
be
you.
sleeping in the basement for a couple of days. Just kidding. But yeah, just take an honest look at it, pray about it, and then
absolutely.
if you need to, talk to friends, like talk to trusted people that you know. Say, hey, what do you do? How do you manage this stuff?
Yeah.
And then really, you can find where you can give, and then you can take what you need, and that 10% comes from what you need, not from what you want.
Yep. Yeah. So to piggyback off of that, whenever you do, if you write down all of your expenditures, one of the very first things to do, I know Dave Ramsey talks about it and a couple of other people, when you're putting together that needs list, the very first thing you budget, the 10% for tithing. Like literally just put that at the top.
God.
This is number one because this is what God has called us to do. And then fill in okay, well, my second most important thing is I need a place to live. So my rent / mortgage.
Yeah.
And then it might be my car payment. And then it might be insurance, electricity, whatever it might be. But start with the needs. And also make sure you put savings down. That is incredibly important. I'm mainly talking to my generation, Generation Z. Please start saving money now. Even if it's $20, $30, $40 a month. start small and it will grow over time. So please start
most
saving money
certainly
now.
will.
So put that budget together. If you need help putting together a budget, you can go to my3c.org to the submit a question tab. You can do that on there. But also, if you go back to the first message of this entire series, it talks about putting a financial plan into place to be able to start giving. So that is honestly, I think, one of the most important steps that we can take to start this is by, here's my plan. I'm going to stick with this plan. I read a story of Kobe Bryant. And every single season before the NBA would start, he playing for the Lakers, he would make a contract with himself.
Yeah.
Like, every day I'm going to take 850 shots from here, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this to improve. And every single year he would set that contract, and he would sign it, and no matter what, even if he was injured, he would still fulfill that contract because he made that contract with himself. And if we view our financial plan as, this is a contract that I have made with myself, and I'm not going to break it, it makes it a lot easier to not go, oh man, stuff's tight. So instead of 10%, I'm just going to take out 5%. I'm going to move that down here. If you just stick to it, like sign that contract with yourself, it will help you reaching that benchmark and help you grow that generosity through what Matt said earlier, through that constant exposure of doing it. So
I cannot
absolutely.
stress writing things down enough. This past
Yes.
week, I finally I re-downloaded the My Fitness app, and I've kept track of all the food I've eaten.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, when you don't, it's so much easy to just go 1 Oreo, 2, 3,
Yep.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now I'm looking at it, I was like, well, I don't even want to take 1 Oreo.
Yep.
It's crazy how just writing things
Yes.
down and holding yourself accountable
Yep.
can really change. And
Yes.
that's just with your weight, which is important. But this has everlasting,
Yes,
eternal
absolutely.
effects on everything. So,
Absolutely,
yep.
absolutely. Well, Andy, thank you very much for coming to answer some more questions about
problem.
all the monies. Pastor Dave, thank you for continuing this fantastic series. It's been very good. I know it's been a blessing to so many other people. Anybody that's listening, if you have any questions at all about anything that Pastor Dave talked about today or anything you come across in the Bible or throughout this series, you can go to my3c.org to the submit a question tab. Go on there, submit your question, totally anonymous. Our goal on our midweek Q&A, which by the way, we didn't do one last week because Dave had a little bit of a cold and wasn't able to make it. But our goal with our midweek Q&A is to eventually get to all of the questions that are asked. It may take a few months, but our goal is to get to every single question that gets asked. So if you have any questions at all, my3c.org, submit a question tab. Our goal is to answer that Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. on our live Q&A, me and Pastor Dave sitting down tackling those. Thank you guys so much for joining us this week. We hope to see you this week at our Q&A or next week at one of our services, 8:20, 9:40, 11 o'clock. Our live stream service starts at 9:25 with the pre-show where you might be seeing Andy's face on there.
Might be.
It's a great pre-show. It's always a lot of fun. I highly encourage you to go do that. It also helps you keep up with things that are going on here at the church. And then we will immediately wrap that up with our post-show. So we hope to see you either Wednesday or at one of our services this upcoming Sunday. Have a great week. We love you here at Connections, and most importantly, Jesus loves you. See you guys.